It's time to take it back. I'm taking what is mine.
Go ahead and move on to the bolt sleeve here. I'm just going to take this and get off all this extra grease. Now one of the other moving O-rings is down here inside the bolt sleeve. Let's see if we can, I don't know if you can see that kind of dark line that's down sitting in right in there, but that's actually an O-ring. It's one of the other moving O-rings that's in here. You want to make sure you get in and wipe that one out too. It's kind of hard. Maybe you need to use like a swab or something like that, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of extra grease in there. Go ahead and come in on the other side of the bolt sleeve and clear that. Alright, so that's looking good. Go ahead and inspect these O-rings for any damage real quick. And these look pretty good. Obviously, you're not going to be able to really inspect the internal O-ring for damage unless you actually take it out, but just giving it a quick once over, it looks pretty good. So go ahead and take that. So before we work with this, let's get some of this extra grease off the bolt and firing can here. So like I said before, with the HE bolt, the fire can is going to come out with the bolt. If you have the stock system, the fire can will come out separately. But with this, you're going to take the can and move the bolt back so the bolt's sitting down inside the can like that, so you can get access to the front of the can. And you're just going to take off this top piece to the can. It's going to give it a little pull and it's going to come right off. And there's definitely a lot of grease on here. But it's only held on by a buffer O-ring there, so you can go ahead and just pull that off. Wipe this off real quick. Set that aside and get some of the other extra grease that's sitting right here. Alright, so the piece that's actually holding this can to the bolt, if you slide the can back down, is this O-ring right here. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that real quick so you guys can see that. There's an O-ring that's sitting right there. If you pull the can down all the way, you can see it. And that's what's preventing the can from actually coming off the bolt. So you need to work that very carefully to get the can off. I'm not going to do it because I don't have any of my O-ring picks here right now. I'm not going to touch this bolt with anything. But if you did take it off, you want to be extremely careful to not scratch the bolt or scratch the indent that O-ring is actually sitting in. So continue to wipe off some of the extra grease here. Alright. I'm going to take a look at these two rear O-rings on the bolt just to make sure. Looks like one of these O-rings isn't seated right, so we're gonna see if we can pry it off a little here. Looks like half of the O-ring is flipped over on itself onto the other side. Clean that area. Alrighty, so there's a little dirt and debris on there. Very carefully clean that off. That one's done. Alright, make sure this O-ring is now seated properly. Some extra grease sitting down in there. So get rid of that. Alright, now very carefully we're going to push this back up so it seats right when it sits. Alright, I did find a little bit of dirt and debris down inside the bolt, so I very carefully was able to get that out. So we're just going to go ahead and carefully throw this back together. Don't want to do that. I have some grease. Obviously, I told you my parts and everything aren't here, so this is all I got is a can of hater sauce. This is version 1 hater sauce, but it still works fine. Personally, I like to use hater marmalade when I'm working with spool valves, but this will work just fine. I'm just going to get a little bit on this one. It's the top of the firing can right there. Just a little bit. So we can go ahead and attach that back to the top. Alright, that's seating right. Firing can's moving nice and smooth. So we're going to go ahead and grab a little bit of grease here on these outside ones. Not too much. You don't need too much on the non-moving O-rings. Just enough. And I did throw a little bit of grease on right before on the that inner bolt O-ring. So we're going to put a little bit on these other 2 moving O-rings right here. You definitely don't want to under grease this gun, and shockers do love grease. So if you put a little bit too much on, it's not going to kill it. But you definitely want to liberally grease a shocker. Okay, set that aside. It stops rolling away. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and put some grease. You want to make sure you get one on that moving O-ring that I showed you guys earlier, the one on the inside. Just a little bit. Good amount. Alright. And just a tiny bit on the outside, the non-moving ones. Put a little on these. Definitely you need to make sure you put some on these 2 moving O-rings right here on the bolt guide. So those are the most important systems, and a little bit right here just on the buffer O-ring, just to keep the O-ring so it doesn't dry out or anything like that. Just a tiny bit on the actual guide itself. Alright, so we're ready to throw this thing back together, back in the gun. Now you can pretty much assemble this whole thing and kind of pop it in there in one shot if that makes it easier for you. Go ahead and put that back in there and slide the bolts, so that's sitting on one big piece. Go ahead and take the bolt guide, the bolt. Alright. Clean off my hands just a little bit here. Get some of that extra stuff out here. And if you guys do happen to look down inside here and you notice any dirt, debris, or anything like that, you're going to want to get that out just with a swab. If you can get a paper towel down in there, that'll work. You don't want, because you don't want to leave any fibers or anything like that down there. That would mess up the gun. Make sure your breech is nice and clean as you do that. So this one is nice and clean and good to go. Go ahead and take this whole bolt guide, nice and easy. Get everything back down inside. You can kind of hear a final click, and right as everything settles in there. So go ahead and take this, and this is slightly damaged, so I'm going to use the ball socket here so I don't. Alright guys, just threw the barrel back on real quick and threw the tank on. There is a small leak, you can hear that. That's actually just coming from this macro fitting down here. The macro is just not long enough. So I'll just cut a new piece and throw that on. No big deal. Big thing is there's no leaks coming from the gun, there's nothing from the bolt guide, there's nothing from the reg. So, greased it up, replaced the Noid, we're good to go. This might be a little bit loud, but shooting. No leaks. Looking great. So hopefully, I don't really have too much air to go out and do a shooting video, but hopefully within the next few days I'll be at the park all this weekend, and we'll get a good video in for you guys. Thanks for watching.
Okay.